After the 2016 election, yeah, and I was naive, wrong about this. Part of me just kind of wished that Bernie would go back to the Senate because I thought that we had put together enough of a self-generating force around, well, especially around, the 7 unions that made up, the Labor for Bernie coalition in 2016. I was wrong, right? Because the history of progressive politics in the U.S. has been so had by that point been so kind of I'm trying to find a non-pejorative way of describing, but had become so accustomed to doing the same kind of thing over and over again, right? To mobilizing instead of organizing, really is what it comes down to. To go back to Machiavelli, that when people went back to their states, and this makes sense too, right? Because with the state level races and the off-year races were important, right? But the impulse was always to double down on deepening the same coalitions around the same bases, right? On the same kind of stuff, right? The same laundry lists of issues that never really got to the big picture and never really strove to kind of broaden the base to people who didn't talk to us already because everybody's always in election mode, and there are two radically different approaches to organizing, right? During an election, you want to move as quickly as possible, define the message as diffusely as possible, just at the level of door knocking, right? You want to drop off the literature and not talk to anybody, and cover as many houses as you can, whatever. In an organizing campaign, you want to do just the opposite. You want, as I often say, the old lady to invite you in and to offer you tea and cookies and talk about our grandbabies, and you find the connections that you have with her and try to build on them and broaden the base. But when you're operating under the pressure of the election cycle, you can't really do that kind of work. But that's the kind of work that you have to do to broaden the base of a movement, right? To talk to people that don't already agree with you, right? So it turned out, so we didn't get anywhere much, right? Or get anywhere near as far as in my, more optimistic moments, I hoped that we might have between 2026 and 2020 and 2020. 2020, it was different, right? Things stuck, right? It's not just that Medicare for All was the big winner in every primary, no matter how Bernie did, or even in South Carolina, right? Medicare for All won even though Clyburn cleaned Bernie's clock. And, we worked in South Carolina on the ground then, and we've had 18,000 people sign pledges, and, mainly black, mainly working people who have said that they would prefer not to vote for anybody who didn't support Medicare for All. Now, they voted for Clyburn, but still, that was something. It was something to build on. And what we also saw was that once ordinary people started to think about what single-payer healthcare actually looked like and how easily it could be won, and to discuss questions like just transition, to indemnify people who would be displaced and so forth and so on, then it was natural that they also started thinking about other public goods that it made sense to want and to demand, like free public higher education and stuff. So it's possible to do it, right? Now, what happened was, and I'm not going to any crazy conspiracy theory, but the pandemic just kind of undercut all those efforts, and then it was amazing to see how quickly after the murder of George Floyd, the sort of that element within the Democratic Party that would really like to put together a coalition that can sometimes win, right, like the Whigs in the 1840s and 1850s, but that doesn't include the labor movement, right? Went to work carrying the torch for racial justice, right? And we know what Jeff Bezos' idea of racial justice is, apart from giving $100 million to Van Jones. So that's another part of the story here, right? That there is, and I mean, you remember also between 2016 and 2020, the racial justice talking heads, and Joy Reid is my go-to for this, but she's ultimately kind of indistinguishable among a lot of them. But their line was that Bernie didn't speak to black people, didn't address black people's concerns, while polls were showing that Bernie was actually polling higher among blacks than among any other Democratic constituency. And the way that goes is, the only way that works is for them to cover their ears and keep screaming, but that's not what black people really want. That's not what black people really want. And when you get down to it, it's their job for that not to be what black people really want, because that's because this is almost like a class politics.
Yeah.
But
do you go ahead?
Wait, I want to say one more thing about this, because I want to be really clear about this. That it's time for us now, it's beyond time for us to recognize that showing photographs of civil rights demonstrations and making references to the high period of civil rights activism does not perfume the fact that this is not a working class politics, but it's an anti-popular politics. And we just have to, those of us who want to understand ourselves as kind of serious progressives or people committed to justice and equality, just have to recognize this stuff for what it is. And it is a class politics. It is not, it's a politics of the class of people who would expect to benefit from narrowing the racial wealth gap. There's no other and clearer way to put it, which for the record, is a gap that exists only between the 10% of richest black people and the 10% of richest white people.
When you say this stuff is a kind of class politics, just put a finer point on that. What do you mean exactly?
I mean this understanding of identity-based politics or disparitarian politics.